Hey guys, welcome back. Ashley D. Will here, author, teacher, life coach. So I hope everyone is doing well today. I have been getting lots of material from the Lord, but He told me to wait 7 days to do the next video, so I have been waiting. So today's video is called A Time for Everything. A time for every single thing. So let's read Ecclesiastes Chapter 3, verses 1 through 8. This will be an encouragement for you because sometimes we think that some kind of strange trial has come upon us and it's not of God and He didn't orchestrate this, and we just feel so thrown off and we feel confused. But when we read the scripture, we can put it in context, and that's what I love about scripture. It puts everything, the whole world and your whole life, in context. So verse 1 says, "There is a season, a time appointed for everything, every single thing, and a time for every delight, a time for every event, and a time for every purpose under heaven or under the sun." So, do you hear that everything is included in here? Every single thing. There's a time appointed. Now let's read some of the examples he gives us to cover all the categories that we may wonder about. Verse 2 says, "There's a time, specific appointed time to be born for each person, and a specific appointed time for each person to die. There is a specific appointed time to plant, and there is a time to uproot what is planted." That doesn't sound right. There's a time to die, and God is involved with that, and there's a time to uproot what was planted, and God's involved in that. We tend to think of only the good, happy things. We think of those as having to do with the Lord, but the things that are painful or hard or things that break your heart, He would never be involved with those things. But the scripture is telling us something different, isn't it? It's letting us know that He's involved in every part of life, and that there is a time for every single thing, the positive, the negative, the good, the bad, and everything in between. Verse 3 says, "There is a time to kill and a time to heal. There's a time to tear down and a time to build up." I remember when years ago we lived on this same property, but we were in a different house. We had to tear down the house that was here in order to build the house that we're living in now. So sometimes God has a plan in tearing down something or uprooting something because He has something new to plant or something new to build. Verse 4, "There is a time to weep and a time to laugh." See, we would say this is bad and this is good. And God is in the laughter, but Satan is in the sorrow. That's not biblical. That's not reality, you guys. God created all things. He created all of our emotions. He is in charge, okay? So I'm trying to help you move out of this black and white mentality to see that every single thing God is involved in. People say, "Oh, that was a God thing." Well, really, everything's a God thing if you think about it. If He is sovereign, then everything's a God thing. So there's a time to weep and a time to laugh. Likewise, there's a time to mourn over loss, and there's a time to dance and celebrate. Verse 5, "There's a time to throw away stones and a time to gather stones." Remember the memorials they would build with the stones, stacking up the stones to remember certain things the Lord had done? Well, He's saying there's a time to throw away stones. There's a time to embrace or come together, and there's a time to refrain from embracing or move apart. There's a time to search and a time to give up as lost. As hard as that is, There is a time for it. I remember we had a beloved pet that we lost. When my youngest daughter was having her 12th birthday party, our beloved pet snuck out the door, and we lost him for a time, and we just knew that we had to find him. And we did everything humanly possible to find that beloved pet. And coming to the place where it was the time to give up as lost, that was one of the hardest things that we ever did, was to give up as lost. But there was a time for that, and we did it. So that was very difficult. There's a time to keep and a time to throw away. Then verses 7 and 8, there's a time to tear apart and a time to sew together. These can be garments. These can be relationships. This can be lots of different things. But these verses are giving us a picture that everything, there's a perfect time for it appointed by the Lord. There's a time to keep silent and not speak, and there's a time to speak out. Verse 8, there's a time to love and a time to hate. There's a time for war and a time for peace. So I hope that you can see that in the whole of Scripture, these verses are showing us that God specifically appoints seasons and times for every single thing under the sun. For every delight, the good things, and every event or purpose. That includes a lot. Every delight, event, or purpose, right? That includes everything, right? So I hope this will help you see that God is in the good and the bad, and in the neutral, the in-between. He's in everything. So I hope that you'll be able to see His hand in some of the things that you thought He wasn't a part of. Even things that He gives Satan permission to do, He has a purpose in those things as well. Okay, so I hope this is helpful, and I pray you would meditate on Ecclesiastes 3, verse 1 through 8, and become more familiar with this idea, and that you wouldn't just know it in your head, but that you would let it trickle down into your heart to become a part of your being, so that when good things happen and bad things happen, you're not thrown around like the waves of the sea, that you're just being observant and you're noticing that God is in everything. That will help make you a more stable and centered person and believer in these crazy days that we live in. Okay, so you guys have a blessed day, and I'll see you next time.